Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, this is Sequoia here, and I am Chief Curator at the Gardner Museum, and so glad you could be joining us. Rob Lugo, I hope you'll be joining shortly. We're here excited to do an Instagram Live with artist Roberto Lugo, who is based in Philadelphia, and he will be joining us just shortly. I see him here. So I'll go ahead and introduce Rob as he's logging on. Roberto Lugo is an amazing American artist, ceramist, social activist. There he is. Hey, Rob.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Sorry it took a few minutes to get us all on here, but but great to see you. And glad you're here and joining us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Let me see here. I think I need to refresh something here.
Okie doke. You know, I'll go ahead and give a bit of a quick intro to you because I wasn't able to, and maybe some of our folks in Canada here are less familiar with you and your work. So
Okay.
I'll start off by welcoming Roberto Lugo to Instagram Live here at the Gardner Museum. Rob is an American artist, ceramist, social activist, spoken word poet, and educator. You'll see in Rob's work that he uses porcelain and ceramics more broadly. Combining, kind of making a mashup of European and Asian forms with these beautiful and amazing surfaces that bring together images of poverty, inequality, and racial injustice. Rob's degrees are from Kansas City Art Institute and from Penn State, now teaching at Tyler, from Philadelphia and living in Philadelphia, has exhibited widely, Museum of Arts and Design in New York, Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, and lots of collections, MFA, Boston, Brooklyn Museum, LACMA, US's most illustrious potter, and recently a turn on To Tell the Truth, right?
Yeah, yep. I was on TV.
How
That
was
was
that? Was it fun?
uh it was like in some parts it was what I expected and in some parts it wasn't what I expected, because like it happened during COVID, so I actually needed to go there like a week ahead of time. So in my like pottery mind, I'm like, can I give up 4 days of studio? To like it's great to be on the show, but like I don't know if I have the time, but I did it, and it was amazing meeting the Anthony Anderson, who I'm a big fan of. So that was really cool.
You know, I think that question of am I going to give up 4 days to like do this new thing? Like you've given us this example of being on TV for this, but it feels like that's a persistent question in the lives of a lot of artists, and for you in particular, since you have so many other ways of kind of being and engaging with the world. And I'd be interested to hear you speak about that balance of like, how do you think about sort of straight up studio time where you're kind of not looking outside, and times where you sort of which parts of your work have to happen while you are connected to those other outside questions or connected questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I've realized is that one of the ways that uh, I work is that I really value time. I value my own time. I value the time of others. And, I think about the fact that, like, how long will people actually be interested in what it is that I'm doing? And when I think of that, I think to myself that, like, I want to keep making work and get it out there while it's, like, having an effect. And first, yes, it makes me feel like I did something with my life, which is great and all. But I've also seen so many great things happen that are sort of like an echo. Like anytime I see a good action done in our field, I just see a echo of good activity happening from that. And so, um, I do get involved in a lot of projects, but I also like tend to collaborate a lot with people that are much more seasoned in things that that I don't have time, like a lifetime to achieve. So that's also been a blessing to just build community and then work with people that I can rely on to like make really interesting exhibitions and work.
You know, one thing I really admire about you and the way you work is how you do sort of lift up everybody in a way. Like you really help to enliven or kind of people become familiar with some of our elders and some of our seniors, as well as folks who are like just starting out. Um, and it's a really, I think, profound take on this idea of collaboration, of the kind of uplift for folks at all stages of their lives and their careers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, and also like I just feel as if I don't know everything there is to know about any subject, and so sometimes I feel like insecure talking about something all by myself. Like I feel like I want to share my perspective on it, but I'm also curious as to like how someone older than me feels about it, who's been in the field longer, and how, and so what I've always said with my work and what I hope to achieve within the field of ceramics and even craft is this idea that like racial diversity is not like a charitable thing. It's actually for the enrichment of everybody, because no one's saying that like you need to make space for Black and Latinx people by getting rid of the quality of work or any of those things. It's just like making a space. Like all people want is a space, and when you create that space, it's amazing what happens. Like in a world where people didn't have to worry about their race or their gender or discrimination, like what artwork would be made. Like I love envisioning that and trying to create, systems and atmospheres where not just myself but other people could, take part of that.
Yeah. Can you, I'm wondering if I could ask you to speak to your experience of race or experience as a racialized person in the ceramics field in particular, like how, I mean, like it's a big part of how you move through the field and how you talk about your work and yourself and your role. I'm wondering if, for folks who might be less familiar with your work, if you could speak to kind of what's your read on the field of contemporary ceramics when it comes to race.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there has been some development since, the time that I started working in clay, but, I haven't been working in the arts for a ton of time. I would say probably about 12 years in total. And when I was going to school undergraduate for ceramics, I really had a deep intention of becoming a functional potter. I love the humbleness of being a functional potter and the humility of it. And I love like partly I love the anonymity of it because um, I'm also a bit of a hermit, And what became really apparent when I was making those efforts in school is that like that wasn't a way that people could just see me. Like, it was all my pots had to be about something else, And people would, say things in passing that they thought were pretty funny, but that were actually like referring to me as a Mexican gangster, in terms of one of the photographs I had in my class, and so what that winded up doing is making me aware that I'm not ever going to be a functional potter. I'm always going to be a functional potter that's a person of color, or a functional potter that's from Philly. And it's something that I shied away from so long, but I started to embrace almost like you know, this is happening because there hasn't been a lot of representation in terms of makers, as well as like who is featured and talked about through the work. And so I set out to try to do both of those things. And then there's these other facets of my race just beforehand, where as an adult, when you start to look back at your childhood, you start to reflect on how certain things were like, uh, how certain things impacted you so much that really affect the way that you see things today. Like how many projects I'm involved in, and all the things that I'm doing has a lot to do with like my sense of not knowing how long I'm going to live. Like this is a conscious thing that I have. Also, the way that I work with clay has a lot to do with like my, there's certain moments where I can be like really focused and spend a lot of time on something like work, like being away at work. But there's also like I have a different set of priorities mentally. So I am impatient sometimes with clay, and so I have grown to realize all those things about me are really a reflection of where I come from, and so they are apparent and reflective in my work. Um, and where I grew up was primarily a part of the city that people would imagine, is the North Philadelphia. and it was the 80s, you know, it wasn't racist, but I was assaulted by like crossing certain streets in Philadelphia and called names if I went to this street because that was Fishtown and I was supposed to only be in Kensington. And so I normalized that to the point where I thought that's how all white people were. And then until I started really going to college and realizing like how diverse, you know, Caucasian Americans are, how diverse Black Americans are. Like, you know, not everybody who's a brown person grows up poor, right? Not everybody who's Black grows up in the ghetto, you know. And so through my work in ceramics, I've been fortunate enough to meet people from all over, which has sort of expanded my own views. And so when I make work, I'm really trying to like be more conscious and aware of those things and bringing them to my work in terms of like I am so inspired by the eclectic sort of like group of people that I've winded up surrounding myself with, because I still you know, work with people that come from where I do, but I'm also working with museum curators, right? And I love being a part of this world where I can talk to both of those people and understand what they're saying, and then also get something that I want across to them.
Yeah, it's a deep set of skills. Absolutely. Um, you know, if you think of yourself maybe like 10 years old or 11 years old or 12 years old, something like that, when you remember yourself and feel yourself as you were as a kid, are you in some way surprised of where you are now, or would you have seen yourself as an artist at that point?
You know, yeah, it is. No, I did not see, you know, for the most part, all the men in my family, we don't go to high school. In my family, every generation, middle school is it. You're supposed to start working. And so at 10 years old, my idea was like I'd be really lucky if I had a job that paid me $10 an hour, because that's like what my dad makes. And you know, if I could own a home versus renting it, like those are the thoughts that I had, you know. So it's not like you know, I thought to myself, I had these really big aspirations, which is really partially why I make the work that I do, and also why I feel the need so often to be really public with what I'm doing, because you know I want more people to be able to see people like me being successful with careers like being potters, and just that visualization and knowing that that's available. I think there's much bigger implications there. It's not just about being a potter. It's about saying like you can be anything you want, because in school when they say that to you, they say, oh, you could be president or a lawyer or a doctor, and they give you these things that are like so complicated to imagine you getting yourself to, that you just give up, you know. But then when you say to somebody like, nah, you can just like learn how to play with clay and make things you really love, and you can do that for a living, you know. And when they see that, you know, it means a lot to people.
Yeah, it's like there's no better kind of evidence than just sort of being there and like being present, as say as a potter in this case, as an example in a way, or just as a person doing your thing. Um, you've mentioned this about being really public with your work, and you also a little bit earlier spoke, called yourself a hermit. You sort of said that you're really a hermit, and there's this kind of compelling tension, I think, between you as a hermit, as like a kind of protected person and your creative kind of spirit or energy, with this like totally open, like this very vulnerable, really openness about like your family, about your life, about your self-image. You're incredibly open and put yourself in a really emotionally vulnerable position, maybe. Or maybe I would ask, like, do you feel like you do, or do you feel like how do you think about this question of how open you're going to be and how public you're going to be, and what parts of yourself you are public about?
Yeah, I mean, you know, honestly, I feel like it's a reflection of where I come from. Like people in Kensington and Philadelphia, we tend to be really transparent and just say whatever's on our mind. And you know, when we're there, there's different conversations than when we're in a place like this. You know, like when I'm in an art place, for example, I feel comfortable sharing my feelings, you know, where I might not necessarily feel comfortable doing that back in Kensington, but that sort of honesty and transparency still exists, you know. And there's still sort of this need to be open, And a lot of times that gets me in trouble because, like, uh, I find myself so much in contemporary life and culture with people holding animosity but never telling you what it's about, and you just sort of walking on eggshells, and that I think leads to a lot of loneliness. And so I'm always trying to find community by like really trying to be myself. And if those people want to be around me, then they know who I am. And so I find that that's really necessary. But like the interesting thing is the more that my career has developed, the more that can also give fuel to people who don't want to see me succeed. Like when I'm being honest with them and just saying like what I struggle with, they might say, "Oh, look at him. He's like not good at this thing." And it's not a plea for sympathy from anybody. It's just like I feel as if, people think because I have work in museums and I have some notoriety that I don't go through things like depression. I don't go through things like pain, and and so I just try to really be myself because I know that like coming up as an artist, it would have meant a lot for me to see somebody at my level, or my place of notoriety, like sharing those things and being open with that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I can relate to that completely. I think the one aspect of that are the platforms that we have for being open, I guess, or kind of sharing parts of ourselves in different ways. And you've really embraced Instagram, for example, as a way to talk about yourself and your family, in addition to talking about your work and talking about other things that are kind of important for you in the world. And um, wondering about sort of how, I guess how you feel about social media broadly as a platform, or Instagram in particular. Like, what do you feel like are the ways that you've come to know yourself as an artist, with social media?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is like I am an educator. I teach at Tyler School of Art in Philly, and I'm a professor there. And I also have this, career, my studio art, and I work with a lot of people here. But because I'm so busy, there's very seldom like time for like true, like relationship, like with people. And so my whole life, my children in my artwork and my work as a teacher, they all like wind up melding because I wind up having to like do two of them at the same time at all times. And
Right.
so like I've tried before to just have an art page, but it doesn't for me, it doesn't even make chronological sense because it's like in order for somebody to know why I'm making this pot, they would like have to know that like my son was born with a cleft palate, or that I just moved, or that I had to like live in these rural places. And so I feel the need like narratively to do that, and I treat my Instagram that way. And it's also just like I rely on it for companionship, because there are people that like, even though you might post a picture and 1,000 people like it, you're really only talking to like one or two people that you actually know, and they're responding, and it's like kind of a way for you to kill two birds, like share that with my parents, and at the same time keep people aware of like what I'm doing. And so I use it for that purpose. But because of that, it also can uh, hurt you significantly if you're counting on it for those, like that sort of companionship, and then you wind up having a negative response or something that can also tear you up emotionally. So I've been trying to be really careful about um, having some boundaries, for that. But also I really want my kids and my family to be a part of my work, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get to spend as much time with them, or I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do. So
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought your work as a teacher into the conversation too, because you are a professor, and you're actively kind of engaging with folks who were closer to the beginning of their kind of way of learning about clay. And I'm wondering how you feel like, if you can speak to sort of how you feel like your work as a teacher and as a professor kind of inform this larger scope of activity as an artist for you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like being an educator, my favorite part is an opportunity for the conversation to be about somebody else, and it's an opportunity for me to like rely on the assets that I feel are strongest about myself. You know, like, hearing a student and where they're at and figuring out if like myself or one of my colleagues would be a better mentor for that person. Like what type of things can I demonstrate that would maybe pose new questions to them. So, it's just really great opportunity for me to get out of my mind. And it also like keeps me hungry, like it keeps me wanting to keep making work because I'm around people that are full of spirit all the time, and they're full of like awe, and they're so excited about all this newness, and it's really difficult for you not to get excited next to them.
Yeah.
So teaching is really important to me, and also those relationships that you build with other humans. When you teach them and when you show them kindness, and when you have the time to focus on what their interests are and getting that out of them, like those relationships are priceless with students.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something very nurturing about it. Something very kind of, you know, you brought in the idea of communities before, and you mentioned it in terms of finding communities, but in a way you're really building them. You're generating them through teaching
Yeah.
and through these other things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tell my students all the time, if you're annoyed with something, you can't find it, then that it might mean that's the thing that you're supposed to do yourself.
Mm,
And so that's what I've been doing. Like I've always been, I think I've always been in search of community ever since I was little, and I think it was like being more like racially ambiguous and like also culturally ambiguous. I never really like fit in anywhere, and I was also just like a weird Puerto Rican kid that listened to Nirvana in the middle of the ghetto in Philly. Like I was a strange person, and so I think I'm always trying to like find that group of people that I'm comfortable with, and that like seem to appreciate my existence.
you're right, right, right. That's amazing. Um, we've been speaking for a bit, but we haven't talked at all about your work, and I'd love to kind of turn the conversation to what you make and your work as an artist. And kind of happy to start anywhere, but maybe you could share with us like what you've been working on lately, or what you're thinking about now, studio wise.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you a walk around my studio here.
So maybe I'll ask: Are we in your? Where are we now? Are we in your personal
This
studio?
is my Frankfurt studio in Philadelphia.
Mm.
Uh, and does anybody not want to be on camera? Is everybody okay with it? Okay. So I'll just show you here. This is my friend Terry. He's a professor over at Community College in Philadelphia, and we're good friends. And I share a studio. He comes in and makes some stuff too. Anyway, we're getting we're what's really cool about this is like we're like developing a relationship through pottery, which is like really amazing. And then here are a bunch of cups I made yesterday. And so talking about time, like earlier I was talking to you about like that idea of time, and example of that is like often I only have an hour of my day where I can make like I like some like Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays I teach, and so I only have an hour in between, and so I threw these cups, and these cups over here, and so I say, okay, I have an hour Thursday, I'm gonna do that, and then an hour the next day to see how many handles I can make, and that's kind of like I'm always trying to eke out whatever time I can. Right now, I have a show coming up at the Curry Museum, and these are pieces that are like really close to being completed. Like I made this new little platter, so I'm kind of like making things that I've never kind of like uh, made before, like more sort of tableware. So I
Mm.
have this whole set of tableware that's kind of like it's a pattern, but it's also eclectic. So it doesn't just have like images of portraits of people, but it also has images of. I know there's one in here of Megan. Would you mind grabbing me the protest plate over there? And then I also have. I don't know if you recognize this, but this is a version
Oh,
of a jazz bowl. It's a hip hop bowl.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. Is
So
that your
sometimes
first one of the? That's so good. Is that your first one of those, or have you been working on those?
no, I've made one of those for the High Museum in Atlanta,
Right.
and I'm making another version for someone else who fell in love with it. And then here's another version of one of those plates that's going to be in the same table. So the whole table will be filled with these. And then I have a tea set that I made. And then I have like sort of some fare that you would have around the house, like a flour and sugar canister. But this one is for adobo. And then the sort of lids are done in a kente cloth, sort of a textile. And then this is one of these sort of larger pieces that
Wow.
I'm working on right now. And this one has Tupac on this side, and it has Biggie Smalls on this side.
Oh my God. This is amazing. Wow. So is that one finished or is it still
Yeah,
underway?
this one is finished. It's finished, and um, I'm really happy about these. These are, I mean, you know all about pottery, so this is thrown in three different sections, and it's nice because I'm starting to be able to get more and more narrow here, and this sort of like this area where this attaches, which is I think like where a lot of like the drama happens in those
Yeah.
like era pieces. I'm going to show this piece too. So this piece right here is one where I did like a hand built sculpture, and then right now we're painting in an Amari style. So sort of like combining these like two aesthetics, which is really what I try to do a lot within my work. And then we'll probably also integrate some graffiti into these as well.
That's fantastic. So I have a question. How planned out are these versus like do you map them out pretty clearly or are they kind of open?
No,
Yeah.
no, no. Right now, one of my assistants is actually painting this, and so we section this off, break up exactly what we want to go on it. But in terms of scale and stuff like that, we sort of like I just adapt to the pot,
Mm.
like
Hmm.
each pot. Like if you look at the scale of this one, the sort of textures and everything are quite different. So, and then these are some kente cloth patterns that these are plinths. So that large, that vase that actually, would you mind grabbing that and put it here so you can see it in action? Let's see it in action, folks. This is the first time I'm seeing this. Hopefully, it doesn't fall and break and everybody cries.
That would be very sad. So be careful.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, okay, that's good. So yeah, there's the plinth. So that plinth will go there. That's the first time I've seen it. You've
How's
seen it.
how's it look to you?
It looks good. All I have to do now is the important part is I'm gonna do some luster work here to really sort of because if I do some luster here, these are the type of decisions I make. Like if I round this off in luster, what's gonna happen is that'll really frame this, and actually all these colors will pop out more.
Yeah.
And then right here, if I frame this with gold luster, it'll make that sort of Sev Worcester reference that I really want. Because what I'm trying to do is, kind of contrast, but at the same time, like create a dissonance between two patterns that you might not necessarily see on the same body, but making them make visual sense. And for me, that goes back to that notion of diversity, like exhibiting to people how beautiful it is, and it's sort of being a what's the right word? An asset and not like something that is sort of charitable. So these are, and I do different styles. Like these are all hand painted plates done with just overglaze paint and a quill pen. And this one is of the Old Dirty Bastard from the Wu-Tang Clan. This one is Questlove from the Roots. And so I always have like little things on the side in my studio that I'm experimenting with.
Would you mind
Um,
going back to the drawings that are on the wall behind the pots you were showing before and speak to those for a sec?
yeah, yeah. So a lot of times when we have a bigger piece, we have to like sort of draw it out large size to make it make sense. And then earlier this year, I was working on some paintings, and so and then these right here are actually I got an old pen plotter, that they used to use for making blueprints and things like that. and I have been trying to like get make my drawings done with a pen plot, and so this is one of the samples of that. So you know, this stuff's been up here now for like 8 months, and I just haven't even been able to get back to it because of how busy I am. Um, and oh yeah, look at these cups. These are some new cups. So every month I do a cup sale, and this is the one that I'm doing this month. And so I keep the cups. Like right now, they're at $300, and it's like the price I'm sticking to. But they come with like a handmade wooden box. Um, and so these are right now in process. So these have been fired about 4 times. All these lines right here are hand painted, and then we did graffiti and highlighted it in orange. And then now I'm putting this gold luster, almost like, you know, when you get the children's books, they give you
Yeah,
those medals.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
that, and then it's going to have a portrait on top of that.
Have
But
you
again, none of that was like, all I did was start making cups. You know, I didn't know what I was going to do next with them.
how do you figure out whose portrait you want to put on either an individual group or on a series or something? How do you think about portraits?
Well, I see the portraits often as really like functional, you know, like you know, sometimes you know, I already have a like a, for lack of a better word, a vernacular, like a group of
Yeah,
things, principles that I'm dealing with. And so, like, if I look at a shape, you know, like there's so many obviously historic figures or people that you could, you know, put on a piece. But then I think to myself, oh, look at the like shape of this. It reminds me of like my sister's hair, you know, and then I'll think of like people who have that hair who like I haven't like painted yet, you know, and sort of I work backwards that way sometimes. And then sometimes it's functional, like I was really taken aback about like how the story of like Mike Brown just like dropped out of the news one day. You know how it was like so in the news all the time, and it didn't. And like for a long time, I would not draw or paint somebody who was killed by police. But then I started to think to myself, you know, if this person is placed on ceramics, that ceramics lasts thousands of years. And so I'm just thinking about the ephemerality of life and how it is so easily erased and is in and out of the news in one day, but how ceramics has such an archival quality to it that can, you know, it's another form of function, right? Function of being an archival material that can keep the story going so that, I mean, hopefully in the future we don't relive these terrible tragedies.
that we can learn from them. Yeah, that ceramics is like keeps the record in a way.
Absolutely.
Um, we're going to wrap it up here. This has been a fantastic conversation with you. Thank you so much for showing us your work in progress and recent work. It's amazing. I'd love for you to say once more where the show is and when it is, so all folks want.
Absolutely. The my solo show's coming up at the Courier Museum, and I believe it opens in May. So keep a lookout for that. It's called Te Traigo Mi Lelolai, which is the Lelolai is sort of a riff statement, meaning my love in Hibaro, which is where my family is from in Puerto Rico. So it's, you know, I bring you my joy is what it says in Spanish, and it's a show about my family's history and from Puerto Rico out to Philadelphia.
Fantastic. Congratulations and good luck with that. Thank you for bringing a bit of joy into our day today, for sure,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
in many other times. And stay healthy, be well. Thanks for being here. Really great to
Thank
talk.
you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.